And we are recording. So the Shin MIng is something that's been in my life for about 30 years. I first translated the text at the request of Diane Eagles, who owned Dharma Crafts, the meditation supply company, and a longtime member of the Quantum School of Zen. So she told me that when she was younger, she drove a beer truck all around Boston. It was a beer delivery service. And whenever she had a break, whenever she was stopping before unloading or waiting on anything, she would read James Clark's translation of the Shin MIng. That's one of the earlier translations. And she told me that the text meant a lot to her, and she was very pleased that to ask me to do a translation myself. And what she wanted to do was to have 10,000 copies printed and put them in with every order that Dharma Crafts filled. And that's what she did, and that went on for 4 or 5 years or whatever, and then she ran out of copies. I've had some reprinted since then. The other thing I want to mention is probably most of you have heard about the death of Hsin, who was a brilliant, totally alive Zen teacher in our school based in Lithuania, and who died in a car crash just a few weeks ago, and a tragic event. I guess it was just a few weeks before she died, she invited me to give a talk on the Shin MIng in Lithuania. I asked her, why? She says, well, I really like your translation. And I first encountered the Shin MIng when I was 17 years old. She died when she was 45. And it was my first introduction to Buddhism and to Zen. So it means a lot to me. So I'll dedicate this class to Hsin. So looking at my introduction and partly reading from it and associating with it, the author of the Shin MIng was the third ancestor after Bodhidharma. So it was Bodhidharma, we call, and Hsin. Hsin went to Wiko with pretty much the same question that Wiko went to Bodhidharma. Wiko had asked Bodhidharma, my mind is not at rest, please set my mind at rest. And Bodhidharma said, bring your mind out here. And Wiko said, when I look for my mind, I cannot find it. And Bodhidharma said, I have just put your mind to rest. So in the same way, Hsin went to Wiko and said, my body is gripped by a fatal disease. Please, Master, wipe away my sins. And Wiko said, bring your sins out here and I will wipe them away for you. And Hsin sat for a while and then said, when I look for my sins, I cannot find them. And Wiko answered, I have wiped away your sins. After Hsin received transmission, Buddhism was persecuted in China. It was persecuted for most of the 800 years of its existence in China, one way or another. And so he had to spend 15 years wandering, hiding out in the mountains and doing hard practice in the mountains. And out of all of this hard training comes this poem. It's the first poem on record attributed to a Zen master. Of course, scholars quibble about this, but let's just accept the tradition. In the year 582, it's recorded, he met Dao Xin, who was to become his pupil and therefore the fourth ancestor. And in this way, the transmission of Zen continued. So this poem really goes back to the very foundations of Zen, of Chan, in China. The title of the poem, and if you have this introduction, you can see the Chinese characters. Shin MIng, literally means trust or faith. That's what the first Shin means. And if you look at that character, you'll see that it's a person, it's a vertical line with that, standing by her words, and the character for this line, and then a mouth at the bottom, that's words. And if you stand by your words, and yeah, you're trustworthy. And the second Shin, so the words are pronounced the same. I think even the tone is the same in Chinese, is a beating heart. And you can kind of see that with the three lines like that surround, the heart. So it's the heart mind. The word for heart and mind are the same. And then the word for inscription. So that gives us the title. And the best way to summarize, like the total teaching of the poem is that it blends Taoist and Huayan Buddhist teachings on oneness, equality, suchness, interpenetration, and introduces us to the vast and unobstructed world, and that these traditions bring to the foreground for us, in which time and space no longer have their ordinary meanings. Bright and empty, the mind shines by itself. So we have 146 lines, which are usually arranged into 4-line stanzas. And that's typical for a Chan poem, a Chinese Zen poem. For instance, the Mumun Kwan, The Gateless Gate, the classic collection of 48 kongans, has a statement of the case, a brief commentary, and then a 4-line poem. But the Shin MIng is in a much terser verse form than standard Chinese verse, which either has 7 syllables or 5 syllables to the line, and usually rhymes. So this does not rhyme, and it only has 4 syllables to the line. And this, creates a terse, no nonsense movement. Boom, 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 boom. If you look at the first page of the new handout that I hope was sent to everybody, I hope you have it, you'll see in the right-hand margin the first stanza in transliterated Chinese. And you can get a feeling for what it's like in Chinese, a little bit of a feeling. And I'm sure I have most of the tones wrong, but it's Ji Tao Hu Nan, Wei Xian Chen Zi, Dan Mo Zhen Ai, Dong Zhan Ming Bei, boom, 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 boom. And that's how the verse works. You see in the very first line the word Tao, which means way. And it can be the Buddhist way or the Taoist way. We still use the same word, or rather we should say it occurs in our chants. For instance, in the 4 great vows, Do, Bull Do, the Buddha way. We vow to attain the Bull Do, the Buddha way. So it's pronounced a little differently, Dao, Do. And I think it's intentional that one of the very first words of the poem reflects both Buddhist and Taoist traditions. You notice a word in the last line that you probably recognize as Ming, as in the Ming dynasty. Ming means bright, brilliant. So the first stanza, as I've translated, is the great way is not difficult. Chinese says great way, not hard. I didn't feel I could be that terse and have anything that would succeed as poetry in English. But great way is not difficult. Maybe I should have said hard. The great way is not hard, but I kind of like difficult. Just don't pick and choose. And that's pretty much what the second line says. Cut off all likes and dislikes. That's pretty much exactly what the third line says in Chinese. And it is clear like space. So most of you will recognize this as a teaching phrase that Zen Master Sun was fond of. Clear like space is clear like a mirror. Red comes red, white comes white. So this is a deliberate move on my part as a translator in the Quantum School of Zen. It's to work the language of our teacher into this translation. The Chinese actually says it illumines itself. So the great way it illumines itself. That's the Ming Bei. So it is clear like space is, I think, close enough to the meaning. And, you know, there was nobody editing this. I was responsible to no one, so I just did it. And this is what we have. And you'll see that I deliberately echo Zen Master Sun San's phrases throughout the translation. Well, here and there, I should say, in the translation. This first section, the first 4 stanzas, if you had to assign a theme to them, you would say non-duality and the Tao. The Tao is the way. As I said before, we translate this as faith or trust in mind. I chose trust instead of faith because I wanted to avoid religious connotations. But maybe that was a mistake because, you know, the title and the very direction of the poem is in some sense a response to the Buddhist tradition that was most prevalent in China by a long shot when Chan was just beginning. And that's Pure Land Buddhism. Devotion to Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light, who has created a Western Pure Land, which, as Judy says, it's just not west of, you know, China or something. It's west of our universe. It's cosmically west. And that anyone who recites the name faithfully, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, homage to the Buddha of infinite light, will be reborn in the Western Pure Land. So the title announces that in this tradition that we're in now, we're not putting our faith in Amitabha, in a Buddha, in an other, to save us. We're putting our faith in our own mind, our trust in our mind as a means of meditation. So the much of the poem really can be interpreted as advice on how to meditate and maybe how not to meditate. And in this first section, we begin with the Tao, and then, you know, 4 stanzas that express in different ways non-duality. So non-duality, of course, means everything is one. So at first we have don't pick and choose. And this is not, you know, at all in the sense that you can't make good choices and bad choices. It's the sense of the English expression, don't be choosy. You know, I really like this, I don't like that, sort of thing. So express, just don't pick and choose, cut off all likes and dislikes. Then in the second stanza, to see things as they are, don't be for or against. Third stanza, likes and dislikes are the mind's disease. And then if you choose or reject, you cannot see things as they are. And this is very straightforward advice, this diatribe against duality, is punctuated with phrases like the slightest distinction splits heaven from earth. So why not pick and choose? Because the slightest distinction splits heaven from earth. That habit of mind destroys in us the primordial unity of the universe. And then in terms of meditation practice, if you miss the deep meaning, stilling thoughts is useless. It is clear as vast space, nothing missing, nothing extra. And these four stanzas that really announce the themes that run through the entire poem. Wanted to point out a couple of Taoist, some Taoist language in these four stanzas. This deep meaning is the Taoist phrase Xuanqi, and Xuan, which might spell Hsuan, occurs in the Tao Te Ching, and it means deep and dark, deep and dark. So it could be the dark meaning or the deep and dark meaning, but deep meaning is more natural to English. This stilling thoughts, is a meditation direction that actually, you find it in other early Indian spiritual traditions besides Buddhism. So, for instance, the Yoga Sutras announce that the purpose of yoga practice, which is meditation practice and not asana as we know it, chitta vritti nirodha, nirodha, the stilling of chitta vritti. Chitta is mind and vritti is vibrations, fluctuations, stilling the fluctuations of the mind. But the Shin MIng here says if you miss the deep meaning, stilling thoughts is useless. That's not going to get it done for you. The clear as vast space is also Taoist, the HSU, Shu, which is vacuity, emptiness. And it's also used, or it's close to the Chinese word kung, which means emptiness, and this will occur in the next section. So let's move on to the next section, which you might say the general theme here is meditation practice. So outside, don't get tangled in things. Inside, don't get lost in emptiness. Don't get lost in emptiness. So this is presenting emptiness as a trap in meditation. Vacuity might be a better word because, of course, emptiness is a key, a favored concept, in Huayan Buddhism and in Zen Buddhism. But this vacuity, that vacant state that you can, a torpid vacant state that you can fall into in meditation. But be still and become one, and confusion stops by itself. And this oneness, which is of course the opposite of duality, keeps recurring. So stop moving to become still, and the stillness will move. If you hold on to opposites, you can not understand one. If you don't understand one, this and that cannot function. Denied, the world goes on. Pursued, emptiness is lost. So emptiness, it's the same word always in the Chinese. But sometimes it refers to a vacant state of mind, which is not the same as emptiness. And in stanza 8, we're advised to stop the internal monologue. The more you think and talk, the more you lose the way. Cut off all thinking and pass freely anywhere. And of course, we're all familiar with the internal monologue. Return to the root and understand, chase outcomes and lose the source. That return to the root and understand reminds me of Chinul, the great Korean Zen teacher in the 1200s, tracing back the radiance, return to the root, to the source, and understand. One clear moment within illumines the emptiness as the emptiness before you. So here emptiness, has its favorable connotation, and it's equivalent to prajna, to wisdom, to understanding. The Chinese word for moment is nian, which will come up later. It means both thought and moment, or put it together, a thought moment. So one clear moment within, one clear nian within. The third section continues the oneness and duality theme. And I'm just going to read through it carefully without making any comments except for one in the 12th stanza. So emptiness changing into things is only our deluded view. Do not seek the truth, just put down your opinions. Do not live in the world of opposites. Zen Master Sung San's opposites thinking. It's always saying that. Be careful, never go that way. If you make right and wrong, duality, your mind is lost in confusion. Two comes from one, but do not cling even to this one. So attachment to oneness, attachment to samadhi. Samadhi, the Sanskrit word, means making same. In other words, establishing oneness. It can be another meditation trap, just as emptiness can. Do not cling to this one. And cling is the key word in the advice here. If not a single thought arises, the 10,000 things are without fault. The word for things in the Chinese there is dharma. Well, it's fa. It's the Chinese translation of the Sanskrit word for dharma, which means a lot of things. It means, teaching. The Buddha Dharma, but its fundamental meaning is real, what's real. And so the 10,000 things is a way of expressing reality as we know it. No fault, no 10,000 things, no arising, no mind, no one to see it, no world. This comes when that goes, that arises when this sinks. That's kind of parallel to the early Buddhist teaching of dependent co-origination, pretty much as it's understood in Huayan Buddhism. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get to the end. The fourth section, you might say that the theme is Taoism and naturalness. And of course, Taoism is a kind of naturalness. And we'll go rather quickly through this. So in emptiness, the two are the same. And each holds the 10,000 things, unity and emptiness. If you do not see great or small, how can you prefer one to the other? So if you don't make distinctions, you don't have preferences. The way, the word there of course is Tao, is calm and wide, not easy, not difficult. But small minds get lost. Hurrying, they fall behind. Clinging, they go too far, sure to take a wrong turn. Just let it be. In the end, nothing goes, nothing stays. And then pretty much right in the middle of the poem, follow nature and find the way. So the Tao, in Taoism, and as it comes through in Chan, in Zen, is the state of naturalness. Follow nature and find the way. So Zen Master Sung San used to say, Buddhism and Taoism get married and have a child, Zen. So these two traditions are coming together. Free, easy, and undisturbed. Tied to your thoughts, you lose the truth. Become heavy, dull, and unwell. That's a good touchstone, the phrase free, easy, and undisturbed. So see if your meditation is like that the next time you practice. Free, easy, and undisturbed. The fifth section, a theme here might be the one vehicle. which is a phrase that comes up in stanza 19. Not well, the mind is troubled, so why hold or reject anything? To ride the one vehicle, do not despise the six senses. So we know the Mahayana means literally the great vehicle. The Hinayana, which is mostly just a pejorative term introduced by the Mahayana, means the lesser vehicle. The Ekayana is the Sanskrit word. Eka means one, and ayana means vehicle, is referenced here, the one vehicle. There are many schools of Buddhism, and many of them claim to be the one vehicle, of course. But here it's not used to refer to any specific school of Buddhism, any philosophical school of Buddhism, but as attention to all manifestations through unity, the one vehicle, unity of the six senses, the sixth of which is, of course, mind. And so that theme continues. Not despising the six senses is already enlightenment. So it's only when I see, feel, hear, touch, smell, think, No, not despising the six senses, which that's how the universe is presented to us, is already enlightenment. The wise do not act, fools bind themselves. In true Dharma, there is no this or that, so why blindly chase desires? Using mind to grasp mind is the original mistake. Original mistake is another Zen Master Sung San expression. The word might be better translated as fundamental mistake. But what's fundamental is right at the bottom of things, and I kind of like original mistake because it gives rise to all of the other mistakes. Using mind to grasp mind. In other words, to use our rational mind to try to figure out our mind, what we are. And of course, we're always advising students not to think your way through a kongan. So using mind to grasp mind is the original mistake. Peaceful and troubled are only ideas. Enlightenment has no likes or dislikes. All opposites arise from faulty views. Illusions, flowers in the air, that's a kind of common Chinese expression. It's kind of like, when your vision is blurry and you're seeing spots, that's flowers in the air. Win, lose, right, wrong, put it all down. Another Zen Master Sung San saying that's actually fairly close to the Chinese here. The sixth section is meditation, practice. Well, it's that more than anything else anyway. If the I never sleeps, and of course the I is consciousness, dreams disappear by themselves. If the mind makes no distinctions, the 10,000 things are one essence. See the deep and dark essence. That again is a Taoist expression, that Xuan, that deep and dark, something that's way down there, very, very fundamental. See the deep and dark essence and be free from entanglement. See the 10,000 things as equal and return to true nature. Without any distinctions, there can be no comparisons. This is better than that. Stop and there is no motion. Move and there is no stillness. If you're not making distinctions, that's how movement and stillness are the same. Without motion or stillness, how can a single thing exist? In true nature, there are no goals or plans. Then the seventh, we're back to non-duality again, which actually has been running throughout. In fact, almost every stanza can be understood as some expression of non-duality. And the notion of the original mind, which is the first line of 28, in the mind before thinking. So in the mind before thoughts arise, in the original mind, no effort has to be made. Doubts and worries disappear, and faith in mind, the title of the poem, is restored. Nothing is left behind, nothing stays with us. Bright and empty, the mind shines by itself, and that recalls the fourth line of the first stanza, that illuminates itself, shines by itself, and here it's the mind, as distinct from, if it can be distinguished from, the Tao, the great way. In the mind without effort, thinking cannot take root. I love that as an expression of, meditation practice. The mind without effort. Our minds are mostly just tying itself and ourselves into knots. So meditation, the mind without effort, thinking cannot take root. In the true Dharma world, there's no self or other. To abide in this world, just say, not to. Not to includes everything, excludes nothing. Enlightened beings everywhere all return to the source, beyond time and space. One moment is 10,000 years. Again, the word for moment here is nyen, N-I-E-N, is the way it's transliterated, which means a thought moment, or simply a thought. So a thought or a moment of thought, and three ways to approach that word. So one moment is 10,000 years, and 10,000, of course, is simply proverbial for infinite time. All of this has been leading up to, and there have been various preludes, you might say, to what becomes even clearer in this last section, Huayan. Huayan it means lotus flower. It's the Buddhism that's expounded in the Avatamsaka, the Flower Ornament Sutra. And it's pretty well expressed in these three stanzas, or these first two stanzas in this. Actually, beyond time and space, one moment is 10,000 years, is definitely also Huayan. So we've been led up to it. Nothing here, nothing there, but the universe is always before you. Infinitely small is infinitely, infinitely large is infinitely small. No boundaries, no differences. What we have here is interpenetration of space and time dimensions. Infinitely small is infinitely great. So the tiniest atom contains the whole universe. The whole universe is contained in a single particle. Total interpenetration throughout the universe. So infinitely large is infinitely small. Measurements do not matter here. What is what is not. So being and non-being are the same. What is not is what is. Where it is not like this, do not bother staying. I love those lines. I don't think they're original with me. I don't know where I got them, but that's what it says. So where it's not like this, do not bother staying. One is all is one. When you see things like this, you are already complete. Trust and mind are not two. Not two is trust and mind. And then a couplet concluding, the way is beyond all words, not past, not future, not present. Now, the poem is composed in 4-line stanzas, but you can divide them up in different ways, actually. And some people put the couplet right in the middle. In fact, I have it that way in an earlier version. But I kind of like it at the end, the couplet summarizing all of this. It's beyond speech, beyond thinking, beyond time and space. So that's a quick reading of the Shin MIng, and we'll turn to numerous questions here. So the first question is Shin just another example of a Chinese word with multiple meanings? Well, it is an example of a Chinese word with multiple meanings. But I should say that the character, and we pointed it out, in the little introductory piece, we say Shin, Shin, but they're completely different words. They have different characters. So if you look in a Chinese dictionary that's arranged, by English spelling, the way you would spell the word in English, there'll be 3 or 4 pages of Shin. But the character for each entry will be a different character. And they are distinguished by tones, and the dictionary, a Chinese dictionary, even one that just gives you the English spelling, will have the Chinese sound, and then a tone indicated by a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, first tone, second tone, third tone, rise level. So I don't know if that's the confusion. We say Shin, Shin, Ming. They're 2 absolutely distinct words. There are words in Chinese, as in every language, that will be translated by perhaps different words to translate the same word in English. In other words, one word doesn't, a particular word, it cannot perhaps be captured by one word and translated into another.
So basically, it's 2 different words.
Yes, Shin and Shin Ming. You see the 2 different characters that we explained at the beginning. Here's another question. In section 10, I'm getting section 10 here. Please comment on the meaning of emptiness changing into things is only our deluded view. And then in 18, follow nature and find the way, free, easy, and undisturbed. Oh, so these are distinct questions. So let's talk about emptiness. Changing into things is only our deluded view. There is the philosophical notion that everything arises from primordial nothingness and somehow comes into being through some act of creation. It's sort of like the Big Bang theory. You have this infinitesimally small nothing, and somehow it produces all of this. So that notion actually, exists also, various schools of Chinese philosophy. Everything comes from nothing. And the Shin MIng is saying that's only our deluded view. That actually emptiness and the 10,000 things are the same. It's not that the 10,000 things emerge from emptiness, but they are actually identical. So we try to wrap our minds around things like that. And what happens when you try to wrap your mind around something, that? Boom, dead end. I think that's the idea. So in 18, follow nature and find the way, free, easy, and undisturbed. Since first reading the poem, I understood nature to be the natural world, walking in nature. So like a forest, a prairie, the Baker wetlands here in Lawrence. You will find the way. And reading it this time, I sense that nature is pointing to primary point. So please comment on the meaning, of nature And or a technical question, how is an exclamation point another punctuation shown in Chinese? I only have some familiarity with classical Chinese, and there's no punctuation marks whatsoever. And I actually don't know how in modern Chinese an exclamation, that kind of punctuation might be expressed. I'm sorry, I don't know. But it's not expressed in classical Chinese. Um, so sometimes we have the phrase original nature and original naturalness. And we juxtapose that to civilization, which is getting us farther and farther from nature, but we can still experience this original nature, as the question says, in the forest and prairie, and I added the Baker wetlands. So the question, I sense that nature here is pointing to a primary point. So it is a term in Zen Buddhism that derives from Taoism, which Taoism actually is in China for about 800 years before Bodhidharma comes along. And here we have Chan, and the Taoist notions work their way into Buddhism. And this poem actually is one way. So original nature is, and I made this point before, the word could be translated as fundamental nature. So what is, our fundamental nature? What is the fundamental, nature of the world? What is fundamental nature before human beings come along? So that's what we usually think of as the world of nature. I mean, we know that it's evolved besides producing human beings. The natural world has evolved in significant ways since the Big Bang, or whatever it was that's at, the beginning of the cosmic universe. I mean, that's original nature. And I think there's a sense of that, not simply the world of nature as we know it, as we usually use that word, the outdoors, but original, cosmic nature. What is that? I've been looking at the night sky since I was 7 years old. I was at that point that I pronounced myself an amateur astronomer and procured a telescope. And I remember the first time I saw Venus was, Venus is in, by the way, it's in the morning sky right now. And maybe some of you have seen it. Do you get up early enough that you're looking at Venus in the morning sky? Absolutely. So I knew that it was going to appear in the morning sky. I would study astronomy, and it was going to rise pretty soon, and I would get up every morning, and it's not rising yet. It's not. And then one morning, there it is. I saw the morning star rise, and in our backyard, there was a chinaberry tree, and it rose through that tree. Of course, it wasn't until decades later that, become familiar with the story of Buddha sitting under a tree and seeing the morning star, which must have been Venus, rise. And a couple of times I've organized little parties, I guess you could say, meditation parties, going out into nature, into the country, and at about, say, 4 in the morning, and sitting in meditation all together and waiting and watching. And then finally, we all see together the morning star rise. And it really is something to see. You need a clear horizon. I don't recommend the chinaberry tree approach. The clearer the horizon, the more dramatic it is. You can easily find this information online. When does Venus rise in Lawrence, Kansas? Boom, Google will tell you to the second. I really recommend this as a way of experience original nature in the way that, well, Buddha, first actually experienced it. It's easy to sit 6 feet apart if you want to go out with somebody, but give it a try. Anyway, thank you for your nature question. Then, not well, the mind is troubled, so I hold or reject anything. To ride the one vehicle, do not despise the 6 senses. The 6th sense is consciousness. So we have, the 5 usual senses, and the 6th is consciousness. When we say, oh, you have a 6th sense, that means somehow you're aware of something that cannot be directly perceived. I don't know the origin of the term, the 6th sense. I should have looked that up a long time ago. Anybody know where that comes from? The 6th sense, we're all familiar with it. It's worked its way into ordinary English. But that's what's referred to here. So again, it's mind. It's trust in mind. So do not despise the 6 senses. So mind is the tool that we use when we meditate, but don't despise the other senses either. And they too, of course, are our gateway to the natural world. And then we have, what is it in, it is clear like space. Great way? Yes, great way. So it is clear like space. It means the great way is clear like space. So again, that's how I translated the 4th line of the poem, which, as I said before, actually says something like it illuminates itself, it shines by itself. So what shines by itself? And again, for me, it's the night sky is what shines by itself, the natural world experienced, in that way. I have used the term section when I should have used stanza. Oh, that's okay. We've talked about that question before. And let's see, we have 6 to go, guys. Can you talk more about the 6 stanza lines 1 to 2 and 11 and 3? Okay, so these, well, let's actually look at those actual lines, but I understand the question. So in 6-2, second line, and no, I guess that's not it. Section 2, 6, lines 1 to 2. Stop moving and become still.
Yeah, I'm doing
Okay,
stanza dot.
the same direction. I understand. And then 11.3, which is a different question, I now understand, I think. If you make right and wrong, your mind is lost in confusion. So the first question, make sure I have this right. Oh, outside, don't get tangled in things. Inside, don't get lost in emptiness. So outside and inside here refer to our everyday life is outside. And that we know it's so easy to get lost in things, all the things, we have to do. Of course, the idea of Zen practice is to keep a clear mind, not get lost, no matter what the activity, the circumstances, that are in front of us. Inside, so that's meditation practice. Don't get lost in emptiness. So that's advice about meditation practice. Don't get lost in a sense of vague nothingness, that kind of emptiness. Then the second question has to do with right and wrong. So this question arises naturally. We're told to don't pick and choose, cut off all likes and dislikes, don't make right and wrong, and so forth. So does this mean that we never make choices between something, for instance, that helps people and something that would not help people? And of course, the answer is, certainly not. Um, so the second line, just don't pick and choose. And it's very close to the Chinese there, as I said. And it's exactly what pick and choose is, yin, 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 sort of mind. So that's the dualistic attitude that is, warned against here. So we always have to make choices. And so it's like we're almost always at a fork in the road. One of them leads to wisdom and compassion, and the other, to selfishness and primordial ignorance. Yeah. So not making opposites doesn't mean making the right decision moment to moment. So we make the four great vows, for instance. These are deliberate choices that we make when we recite the fourth great vows. So, I suppose it's possible to misunderstand the teaching of this poem all the way up to, well, you shouldn't make any vows because that's choosing compassion over, hurting people. So it's partly a, common sense, sort of thing. But yeah, the teaching, is valid. We habitually fall back on our petty likes and dislikes, and we habitually let those preferences, govern our lives. So that's the direction of that sort of advice. Where did I leave off? The poem reminds me of the Heart Sutra in its pure and direct way to talk about emptiness and form. That's a very nice observation. It never achieved the status of the Heart Sutra. In fact, the Shin MIng, I don't know that it's ever used in practice, in Zen practice, in any school of Buddhism anywhere. I've asked a little, and obviously I don't know. It's not an important part of our school of Zen, and I don't understand why. I think it's right there at the beginning of Zen. We do have some brief writings attributed to Bodhidharma, but mostly they're thought to be later and in the spirit. Well, Bodhidharma had to say something. Let's have him say this, and get something on record at some point 100 years later. But there's pretty good evidence, again, scholars always bicker, but pretty good evidence that this is at the beginning of our tradition. I think it would chant very well in Chinese with these boom, 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 but you want people to understand it, and so, but yeah, you can definitely put it up there with the Heart Sutra in the way it talks about form and emptiness. Form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That completely rejects the dualism between form and emptiness. So it's the same teaching. So thank you for that observation. I really appreciate it. And then I guess we've been talking about this, verses in 3 and 4 and 27:4 and throughout the poem. Isn't there good and bad though? Correct and incorrect? So we've been talking about this. And the answer is yes, ultimately no. But we have to live our lives, here in the ordinary world. And another question is similar. What is the Chinese for goals and plans? I don't remember, and I would have to look it up. if you really want to know, I'll look it up and let you know. But I think it's just words that mean goal and plan, you know. And then I like this final couplet. It's like a turn at the end of a sonnet where we presented all of these words to say, the way is beyond all words. You know, it's true, a Shakespearean sonnet, you know, has, well, 3 4-line stanzas. Hey, 4-line stanzas. And then a couplet at the end. A Petrarchan sonnet is different, but never mind that. So yeah, with the 4-line stanzas and then the couplet that serve different functions, you know, in different sonnets, but in some way it sums it up, and it certainly puts a cap on it. And so, yeah, those last 2 lines, after we've been talking about how this is all inexpressible. The way is beyond all words. I wondered myself, though, why past, future, and present? Because time hasn't really been brought into discussion, you know, very much. One moment is 10,000 years. Certainly has occurred. Beyond all words, and it's beyond time. It's timeless. Time does not apply to the great way, the universe as it actually is. Something like that, I think. I agree. It's a great couplet to sum things up, to put a cap on everything. And then Suzuki Roshi has said, not 1, not 2. Can you discuss what he might have meant by this? I think he may have had the Shin MIng in mind. But, you know, need context. It's an expression, again, you know, rejecting duality in the not two. You think that perhaps, I mean, one might think perhaps that he's gone beyond the Shin MIng. He says, yeah, not 2, yeah, but also not 1. So if you cling to oneness, that too is a big mistake. So don't have any preferences, you know, not even oneness. And now we have 13 new messages. They've really been coming, I suppose. First, I'll call your attention to what the videographer is saying to everyone. To find this or any of 50 or so videos, go to YouTube and search for Kansas Zen Center. So this is being videoed, this is being recorded, if you ever want to come back to it. And everything else that we've been doing for quite a while is 50 or so videos. A pleasure to be part of this session. I'm really glad you liked it. Time difference meant I missed the intro. Thanks from Ireland. Hello. Hello, Circa. Yes, it's recorded, definitely, the whole thing. And then a thank you. You're welcome. And hi from Ireland. Also, I would like the recording. Oh, and here's something I didn't know. The poem is recited on a regular basis during morning service at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, which is Soto Zen, which is a major Zen center. And I didn't know that. I am very happy to hear that. And I will look into this and see which version they're using. And I hope they have recordings and I can listen to it being chanted. So I will definitely look into that. And there are a couple of questions I've skipped over. And let me see what those are. So this is from the videographer. This is Judy, of course. The sixth sense comes from Germany around 1800, connected to occultism and not connected to the sixth sense in Buddhism, which is natural and daily. I certainly had no notion that it was connected to the sixth sense in Buddhism. So connected with occultism. Okay. Suzuki Roshi has said not one, not two. So we've done that. Which question have I missed? Oh, for some reason, verse 2 brings to mind a hairbreadth's deviation will fail to accord with the proper attunement. This is from the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, which is, again, something that Soto people recite a lot, and that I've recited a lot because I've done a lot of practice in Soto temples. Yeah, and it's very wonderful, and it's in some ways similar to the Shin Ming. If you're off by a hair, that splits heaven and earth. You know, you say, well, I was only off by a hair. Yeah, well, you know, the chasm is infinite if you're off by a hair. I think maybe I've acknowledged at least all of the questions. So thank you very much for coming to this class and supporting the Kansas Zen Center. And if you'd like to unmute yourself now and just hang out for a little anyway, you know, that would be welcome. I'm going to do that myself.